Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Talk Spicy. I'm Coach Gene Clemens, Riptide Media Networks, and the 102.9 The Game app. Make sure you download that if you haven't already. What you should also do is you should follow this guy who is next to me on the screen right now. He is at Akron Jackson. I always like that name, like a little play on Action Jackson. At Akron Jackson, Zach Jackson, who covers the Browns and the NFL for The Athletic. So solidarity to the brothers over at The Athletic. It's been a fun. I think it's been a very fun off season that has led up through these rookie mini camps. It's been some times in the past where I felt as if it was really like cumbersome, like really just we were almost kind of drugged down by things, and it kind of started getting that way a little bit at the end with the quarterback talk. But overall, I think it's been an enjoyable off season. What's the off season been like for you so far?
Well, different. This was the last one without a first-round pick, so that certainly affects what I do, as far as the Browns. Quiet, and I know this makes for bad talk, Gene, on the podcast, but we're not going to know anything about this Browns team till at least a month into the season, right? And probably more than that. And I shouldn't say we're not going to know anything because we know this is a good roster. They should have high expectations. But until we see how healthy and effective Deshaun Watson is, until we know when Nick Chubb's coming back, and what percentage he's at, we're not going to know a lot about this team. So, look, the AFC's loaded. We all know that. There's a bunch of teams chomping at it, getting ready to get out there and thinking they can finally unseat Patrick Mahomes. None of them probably can, right? The Browns think they're one. But if they're going to get to that level, we're going to need to see it way, way down the road. And what they're doing here is getting ready for it, and it's important internally. But it's not creating a lot of splash outside because they kind of have their team, and that was reflected in free agency and the draft. They've made some additions, some guys that can help, but they kind of have their team, and they have to see it healthy, and they have to see it try to click.
Well, I mean, I think that's a very interesting point. I believe when you're not making a lot of noise is when you're at the most dangerous, right? Like when you've been able to kind of stay out of the headlines, stay out of the limelight, stay out of the clicks. That means that you're kind of headed in the right direction, and you have an opportunity to still maybe not surprise anyone because no one's going to be surprised by what Cleveland brings to the table, but you get a chance to kind of just operate in a little bit more of anonymity, and I think that's good. I know that they just had their rookie minicamp, and you were telling me before we got started that unlike a lot of teams that bring in essentially an entire full roster of dudes so they could go through kind of everything, this is really more the Browns do a lot more of an instructional thing. Can you explain to me kind of what their thought process is with that and what they do?
Yeah, it kind of goes to the larger point of they have their team, right? They picked 6 guys, Gene, but only 3 of them are even guaranteed to make this team. It's just an older team. And so, of course, they want to bring those draft picks along. And, of course, they hope some of those undrafted guys hit and, whether it's through the practice squad or through special teams or whatever, make it. But they're bringing them in and they're just getting them ready because in the OTAs, even for Michael Hall, the 2nd-round pick, and Zach Zinter, the 3rd-round pick, these guys are going to be 3rd in line, when the veterans are there. So they're just kind of getting everybody acclimated. This is what they do. They really like the pick of Michael Hall. He's really excited. He grew up in Cleveland, but he's a down the road, and his role is to play in Jim Schwartz's defense, which is get upfield and rush the passer. Attack first, attack second, deal with the consequences, right? So they're bringing back their top 4 defensive tackles, and 3 of those guys are 30. Michael Hall doesn't turn 21 until next month, so that's a pick for down the road. Zach Zinter comes in. He was a 5-year college guy. He's played a lot, but he's behind Joel Bitonio and Wyatt Teller, both Pro Bowl guards. They're not going anywhere this year. Now, can Zach Zinter be a starter in 25? Do the Browns have to make a salary cap related move? We'll see how that goes. But it's just not about right now. So they did sign the undrafted quarterback from Northern Colorado, Jacob Sturman. He was in camp. They did have 6 or 7 other tryout players in there, with 5 or so first-year guys who have been on the practice squad, been at the bottom of the roster for various reasons. But, when you say what happened at Brown's rookie minicamp, man, they taught them the terminology, they introduced them to each other, and it's just getting those guys ready. So 3 or 4 weeks down the road, when they're getting to the end of the summer program, they can make a real judgment on who's getting it quickly and who's not. There's not one guy that they're asking to come in and play in September for this team.
The signing of Sermon, does that mean we're iffy on the availability of DTR this offseason, and Sermon, like, just he serves as another guy to be able to give them an arm that's healthy at camp?
Yeah, that's exactly what that means. So Watson is hoping to throw during OTAs, but I don't think it's going to be in the team setting. So if we look at it, it's Watson, Jameis Winston, Tyler Huntley, and then DTR. But DTR finished the year on IR. So I take the Sermon thing to read. The Browns have been pretty vague about it, that he's just not fully cleared. So they're going to go through, starting next week, 10 OTAs and then 3 full minicamp practices, where Jameis will be the 1, Huntley will be the 2, and then whatever's left, which isn't much, will probably go to him unless DTR is ready. But they learned last year that you got to be ready with the quarterbacks, and it kind of worked out because they stumbled into Flacco, right? Because they found PJ Walker, who wasn't great, but at least had played in the league. And PJ Walker won a game for him. He quickly fell out of favor, but he won a game for him. So they just want as many guys in there. And they did all their homework, Gene, and they knew they weren't going back to Flacco. And the main reason was he was too popular in the locker room. As strange as that is, they knew for Deshaun's everything about Deshaun, and we can get into that if you want. But they decided on Jameis. That's who they were going to pursue. They had done the work on Tyler Huntley, and they thought that another team would sign him, and no one did. And they were surprised, and I was surprised. So they got Tyler Huntley on a minimum contract, and they're going to give him a go. And whether they end up keeping him, cutting him, turning him into a late-round pick like they did with Dobbs last year, or playing him in situations, because Deshaun Watson is not a quarterback sneaker even when he's healthy. We'll see. But it's a big time for Jameis. Jameis has been around forever, but it's a really big next 4 weeks for Tyler Huntley.
I'm interested in when you say they didn't bring back Flacco because of the popularity in the locker room, and I just look at it from the standpoint of popularity. Yes, he's no spring chicken. He also had a propensity to throw the ball to the other team.
He sure did,
quite a bit. That's not something that I'm like, okay, if I'm in the locker room next to him going, oh, I need him over the other guy. But then there's this Jameis Winston, right? And here's my thing. It's not necessarily even about the turnovers, because I think a lot's made it. That's much to do about nothing when you think about Jameis Winston's career in Tampa Bay. He threw interceptions in bunches. He didn't throw consistent interceptions. He would just throw 4 in a game. Then he would have like a game where he might throw 1, or a game where he doesn't throw 1. Then he'd throw 5 in a game, right? And so when you talk about popularity, there is no quarterback in the NFL that has an ability to endear themselves to other players in the locker room like Jameis Winston. If he goes out there, like if Watson's not ready to play, and then Jameis Winston goes out there and does the Joe Flacco, which, by the way, they kind of brought in a very similar guy in respects to arm talent and the ability to drive it.
Yeah.
But younger, like I don't think people realize, like, Jameis Winston's not very old. He's just been in the league for a long time now, because he came in young.
Right.
Like, is there a thought that, hey, we might, Deshaun Watson might stay hurt a little bit longer if Winston is really like lighting it up? Or is the plan, as soon as this guy is 100%, we need to get him back on the field, because we can't afford to like have his psyche, broken?
Yeah, psyche's part of it. Popularity is not all of it. There's a lot of layers to this, Gene. There's no doubt about it. Deshaun Watson's the number one as soon as he's healthy and ready. And there's the $230 million, the 3 first rounders all say that. And they finally did see the better version of Deshaun before the injury last year. I mean, this team went into Baltimore, came from double digits down multiple times and won. Deshaun did not throw a single incompletion in the second half. Like, they looked like an AFC contender, and him playing well was part of it. So, when it comes to Jameis, yes, they like that he's done this, and we all do feel like Jameis is 40 because we've all known him since his very first college game, right, on national TV when he lit it up and then went on and won the Heisman, and that was a long, long time ago. But for the Browns, it's got to be Watson. So they went to Jameis saying, we know that he's been there, he's done that, he's played in different offenses, he's played well, as you've mentioned. If Deshaun gets a high ankle sprain or concussion and misses a game or two, the Jameis can keep things afloat. So if Deshaun misses half the season again, this team doesn't have the ceiling that it does, right? But as far as the spring, when the season ended in January, they were quick to say, Deshaun is ahead of schedule, Deshaun's going to be there. And then as the spring went on, they started backtracking. So Jameis is going to get ready. He's going to get the first snaps for, like I said, these up to 10 OTAs and the 3 days of minicamp. And then the hope is that when they report for camp on July 26th or whenever it is, that Deshaun will be the number one. I don't think they know that yet, and they'll work with the doctors, and they certainly won't overdo it, right? Jameis still has the arm to throw it a mile down the field. But this is Watson, this is Winston, and then everything else is TBD, TBA, a little uncertain. Depending on multiple things. And to me, the biggest being obviously Deshaun's availability and readiness. So there's moving parts here. There's Jeudy. There's not a clear answer at number 2 tight end. There's a second-year guy in Cedric Tillman who showed some flashes last year, but it certainly wasn't consistent. It wasn't for the whole season. Is he your 3 receiver? Is he your 5 receiver? So there's a lot to be settled. Not settled because nothing's settled, but there's a lot to be figured out. And there's opportunity for Jameis and for all those guys that I mentioned to really, build some chemistry and show this team some things over the next month or so.
Yeah. I think the interesting part for me for Jameis is if he is afforded the opportunity to start, if Watson's not ready or for some reason, he comes up and he's afforded the opportunity to start and he's able to put good film together. This is the chance for him to possibly find his way onto a team where he gets the opportunity to jumpstart his career as a starter. I really still don't quite understand the New Orleans situation, the way he was handled in New Orleans, and why they chose to not really give him a legitimate opportunity to start. Once
Carr.
No, I mean, even before Carr though.
Right? Yeah.
Red Rifle, Andy Dalton. There we go.
Yes,
they had Andy Dalton. Winston gets hurt. He's trying to play through injury, like he always has. They have to sit him down. Dalton comes in and plays ball, and then they just went, oh no, this will be good enough for us for the year. And they essentially just threw away an entire year,
right?
Instead of putting Winston back in and allowing him to play. It was really weird. It was almost as if, this was a Sean Payton thing. And once Sean Payton was gone, they just wanted to play out the string, if you will. It didn't make any sense. So I think for Winston, this is not a great opportunity. I like the fact that he's going in with his eyes open. This isn't visions of grandeur or whatever. He understands I'm here to service this man and make sure that I keep the thing hot for him. You were talking about, Nick Chubb. Is there really a thought that Nick Chubb is going to come back and be Nick Chubb after the injury we saw?
Well, there's a hope there. There's some reality internally, right? He took a pay cut from the team. The team, who doesn't talk at all about contract negotiations, was very upfront that Nick Chubb's going to have to take a pay cut to come back. Gina was 2 major surgeries on the same knee, the same one that he had repaired 7 or 8 years ago after that nasty injury at Georgia. This was a nasty injury. Nick Chubb is 28, going to be 29 years old, right? So the reality is the Browns have to prepare, and they have other guys. But one they brought in is Nyheim Hines, who's also coming off an ACL. Another one is Jerome Ford, who got his chance last year and performed well, but then it became clear that he's not a number 1. And Jerome Ford has a unique skill set and fits the offense the Browns want to be when they're wide open and Watson's healthy and doing it, but they haven't seen that either, right? So they're going to bring Nick Chubb along slowly. He is certainly not going to be fully cleared at the beginning of camp. Is he participating in camp at all? Is he PUP eligible? It's too early to know. And that's not just me speculating. That's kind of a hint from the Browns that he's just now starting to run on land, that it's not going to be until June or July, and he gets to some landmarks to where they're going to know. So I think the ideal world is Nick Chubb debuts in October or November, is on a very limited pitch count, and then the Browns, A, protect themselves by continuing to explore other options and bring him along slowly, and B, hold out hope that if you do get to December and Nick Chubb is something close to what he used to be, that he's fresh and ready to tear it up then, right? But I certainly think that they have operated under the reality of that we may have seen the last of the best version of Nick Chubb. So, if anybody can come back from this, it's this dude. He's the ultimate low-maintenance superstar. And you could also make the case that 70% of Nick Chubb is still really good, especially if you can keep him in the bullpen till later in the year, till the weather turns, until the games get bigger. But there's a lot of mystery still surrounding that. And I think, I agree with you that probably the reality is we're not going to see Nick Chubb score 12 touchdowns and run for 1,200 yards this season.
Well, and that to me felt like, okay, now was a great chance for a philosophy turn. I look at the receiving core for, the Browns, and I know everybody is like, well, Jerry Jeudy is this, and I heard what Mark Schlereth said, and calling Jerry Jeudy a bust, which I think is laughable when you look at what Jerry Jeudy has had to endure in Denver over his tenure. I mean, how many different quarterbacks did he have to have, and 3 different coaches now, and that type of thing. But when you add a guy like Jerry Jeudy to go along with Amari Cooper and Elijah Moore, and then you look at the Cedric Tillmans and then even guys like James Prochet, who they were able to pick up, and then you mix that with David Njoku. Is there a chance that what we're looking at is an understanding that we're going to win games differently? Because we saw they didn't win games the way that they were winning them at the beginning of the year, at the end of the year. Is this leaning into that and saying, hey, we want to put together the team that was able to do what we were doing at the end of the year, and give that more of a bolstered effect?
Yeah, I mean, that's what's so exhausting about this whole Watson thing, and still so mysterious, is that he has played so little, and that when he has had his good games, there's been so little chance to build upon it that we don't know, Gene. We know that. I would say this: the Browns paid Jerry Jeudy like they trust him. However, they are very, very clear that Amari's their one, and David Njoku is not a tight end. He's a wide receiver. He's a hybrid tight end. He's all of these things. They almost look at Jeudy like a bonus, right? They say he brings us an element of speed that we certainly didn't have, but they don't know. There's a new coordinator. They're not going to see Watson on the field until July at the earliest. There's a lot of maybes here. So, I think Jerry Jeudy can produce for them. Will it ever be big rate? I don't know. Why did they give him the contract? Strictly because they're outspending every other team, and because the cap is going up, the market is going up, they were willing to take that chance that if it hits, they get the discount. But what's it look like on day 1 or even week 6 for Jerry Jeudy? I don't know. They like the speed. They like that he can play inside and outside. But until they see him on the field with Watson, with Amari, how fast does Cedric Tillman, come along? I don't know exactly where he fits. So they feel better about the state of the pass game with Njoku's huge season and with Amari Cooper still being Amari Cooper. But until they see Jerry Jeudy do it, in exactly how he fits, I don't think they know any more than us. They were willing to take that chance on that speed. And we were all when they traded a 5th and 6th round pick for him, it's that makes sense, right? This guy's got a lot to prove. And then they immediately give him the extension. And it's oh, that's kind of risky because he's never done it. You're right. There are absolutely reasons to point to why he's never done it, but he's just never done it in the NFL.
Yeah, but in my thought process is if everyone's saying that wide receiver now is the value, right? The wide receiver is the value. What he's getting paid isn't abnormal if this is the type of offense you're planning to employ.
Yes.
If you're looking to play 11 personnel on a regular basis, if that's what you're planning to have out there, 3 wide receivers, and Njoku as your wide receiver, tight end hybrid who could do everything and essentially like allow you to kind of transform all of your different formations. It's a great value to have somebody as versatile as Jeudy can be when he's at his best. And then having guys who can get the ball to everyone. The one thing we do know about Jameis Winston does not care who you are.
No.
Like, he's going to throw the ball to the dude. Like, if you're there, he's throwing it to you. So he's not going to be playing favorites. He's going to be getting the ball and passing it around. I do wonder about the thought process behind not bringing in a back that I would say is formidable, like somebody that's really going to go, oh, they brought that guy in. They're preparing legitimately for life without Chubb. I like Ford too, but you've already touched on it. Nyheim Hines, to me, I think is a jag. I mean, he's a dude. He has some qualities that's very similar to a bunch of other qualities. What's Deontay Foreman have? Is Pierre Strong going to become something that people thought he would become in New England? It's just a lot of question marks when there were legitimate backs out there to be had in free agency that could have made the loss of, a guy like Chubb feel as if, well, if he comes back, it's great. But if he doesn't, we're good. We're moving forward.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think you could look at it and say, okay, they're counting on Chubb and they have all these other guys because you don't know how it's going to turn. Or you could say they're not really counting on Chubb and they have all these other guys, and how's it going to work? Pierre Strong is super fast and he's a top 3 special teams player on this team. They didn't run him a lot. He doesn't break a lot of tackles, but he's fast. Ford skill set. Hines played for the new offensive coordinator, Ken Dorsey, and the special teams coordinator, Bubba Ventrone. So I think they felt like if, this is a solid guy, we know what we're getting in the locker room. And it's just he's coming off an ACL. And I agree, he's never been a full-time player. He's not going to be that. They feel like maybe Foreman is an innings eater type, certainly the short yardage back, and we see. This is a team that's all in on right now, Gene. So if it doesn't work with Chubb, if it doesn't work with Hines, and they need to trade for a back, they'll do it eventually. So I feel like, as we try to translate what are they thinking with those moves, running back is probably the group that comes to mind of, well, that's not sure they know either. And until we see Nick Chubb in uniform, that's probably going to dictate a lot of it, because it's not like in first week Nick Chubb can play. I don't expect it to be week 1. I don't know that. It's not like they're going to let it rip with 18 carries, right? That it's going to be very managed. And I think in that regard, they've at least done a good job in giving options for the committee, regardless of how it does turn out with Chubb.
I'm going to get you out of here on this one, because this is something that I've been just wondering about ever since last year. Have you figured out, or do you have a sense of what allowed David Njoku to hit Super Saiyan mode? Like we've always thought that he was immensely talented.
Yeah.
Ever since he came out of college, but he's never shown what he showed last year. And it wasn't like he jumped out the gate and was all of a sudden this. It was just like boom, 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 and bam. All of a sudden he's like arguably the best tight end in the game. Like, what happened? Like, is there something you can point to? Is there something that he's pointed to? Do we have an understanding, or is this just like right place, right time? And
it's a lot of things. At or near the top of the list is personal maturity. This is a young guy when he was drafted, never a full-time player, even in college. Got benched by Freddie Kitchens early in his career for not doing the right things. First-round pick was healthy scratch by Freddie Kitchens, the biggest clown show, right, that there was. So I think it was some of that, Gene. I think it was Kevin Stefanski saying, David is not always going to run the right route or not always going to make the right block. So we're going to minimize what we ask him that, and we're going to try to maximize. They gave him a little more freelance opportunity. They threw him the ball closer to the line and just let him eat. And so I think there was a little bit improved personal maturity. I think there was a little bit improved just confidence in what he could do. And then they found this mix. There was a day in training camp last year, early, when Watson was going, and they were pretty good. Like, I'm no exaggeration, like 8 of 10 balls went to Njoku, and they were all on the money. The ones that weren't got caught anyway, and they went for big gains. Like Grant Delpit, the safety, went on to have a big year and get a contract extension. We did not see him one day in training camp on the right side of things because David Njoku was taking his lunch money every single day. And then it didn't happen early. It didn't really happen. But in that Baltimore game when Watson played well, there was a lot of safe ones that went to Njoku. And I just think his confidence kept going. And then he started saying, give me the ball, give me the ball. And then when Flacco got in there and they became a more vertical offense, he said, I'll do that too. And it just really took off. But I think it was a simplifying of things. And then it was just this burst of David saying, I want to do this. I have to do this. And the little bit of details matching a little bit better fit for his skill set. And like this dude still has a really high ceiling. I mean, how many guys break out in year 7? None, because they're all in the league by year 3, but not this guy. And so I think the breakout could still be happening.
Well, I mean, obviously it's great for Browns fans because it's if there's any way that you think that Browns fans would love to win, it's great run game and a high quality tight end, right? Yeah. Like that almost speaks to the Cleveland, mystique and what they want done. Zach, I really do appreciate you joining me. Ladies and gentlemen, make sure that you follow Zach at Akron Jackson. Make sure that you check out all of his work at The Athletic. He's got a thing up now reintroducing you to the draft class. Zach, we really do appreciate it.
All right, Gene, talk to you. Thank you.
All right, thank you.